The massive meeting hall was filled with strange sounds. Clicks, whistles, and deep humming noises came from every corner. 12 different alien species sat in their special pods, each one built to keep them alive in the shared space. The air smelled like metal and ozone from all the different breathing systems working at once. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of it all. She was the only human in the room, and she felt very small. Her dark hair was pulled back tight, and her blue uniform looked plain next to all the colorful alien forms around her. She held a data pad in her hands, but her fingers were shaking just a little. The Galactic Council had been meeting for over 3 hours. Elena had been waiting to speak for most of that time. The aliens had talked about trade rules, shipping, lanes, and mining rights. Normal stuff that kept the galaxy running, but Elena had something much more important to share. "High Counselor Thexmore," Elena said, stepping forward. Her voice echoed in the huge room. "I request permission to address the Council about an urgent matter." Thexmore was a tall, thin creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Kethmori, had been part of the Council for over 2,000 years. He looked down at Elena with his large, dark eyes. When he spoke, a machine translated his words into basic galactic language. "The human may speak," he said. His tone made it clear he was not happy about it. "But make it quick, we have important business to finish." Elena took a deep breath. She had practiced this moment many times, but her heart was still beating fast. 3 weeks ago, our deep space sensors picked up something strange. Energy readings from the outer reaches that do not match anything in our records. A sound like laughter filled the room. It came from the Zephyrians, a bug-like species with hard shells and many legs. Their leader, General Vexstar, clicked his mouth parts together in what Elena knew was mockery. "The humans have been in space for 50 years, Vexstar said through his translator. 50 years. My species has been traveling between stars for 3,000 years. If there was something dangerous out there, we would have found it long ago." More sounds of amusement came from around the room. The Vorthan Collective, beings made of living crystal, flashed with bright colors. Elena had learned enough about alien body language to know they were making fun of her too. Elena felt her face get hot with anger, but she kept her voice calm. "The readings are not normal. The energy patterns move in ways that suggest intelligence. And they are getting closer to our space. Intelligence?" This time the laughter came from the hegemony representative. The hegemony was made up of machines that had gained consciousness millions of years ago. Their speaker was a tall metal form with glowing red eyes. "Young human, the galaxy has been mapped and studied for longer than your planet has had life. Every intelligence in known space sits in this room." Elena looked around at all the alien faces staring at her. Some showed boredom, others showed annoyance, and a few looked like they thought she was completely crazy. She had expected this, but it still hurt. Humans were the newest members of the Council, and the other species never let them forget it. "I have the data right here," Elena said, holding up her pad. "Sensor readings, energy analysis, movement patterns. Something is out there, and it is heading toward the core worlds." High Counselor Thexmore waved one of his 4 hands. "The Council has reviewed your report, Ambassador. Our scientists found nothing that could not be explained by normal space phenomena. Solar flares, gravitational waves, cosmic radiation storms. The universe is full of energy, human. Not all of it means danger." "But the patterns," Elena started to say. "Show nothing more than coincidence," interrupted the Vorthan representative. Their crystal body pulsed with colors that Elena's translator said meant dismissal and waste of time. "The collective has watched over this galaxy for 10,000 years. Our sensors are far more advanced than anything your species has built. If there was a real threat, we would know about it." Elena felt frustration building in her chest. She had spent weeks going over the data with Earth's best scientists. The readings were clear, even if they did not understand what they meant. Something was moving through the empty space between stars, something that gave off energy like nothing they had ever seen before. "The energy signatures are growing stronger. Elena said, trying one more time. And they are all moving in the same direction, toward us. General Vexstar S. mandibles clicked again. Perhaps the human equipment is broken. Or perhaps they are. Seeing things that are not there. Fear makes people imagine monsters in the dark. The laughter got louder. Elena looked around the room and saw that even some of the more polite species were showing signs of amusement. The Aquatic Union representative, a fish-like being in a water tank, was making bubbles in a pattern that Elena knew meant silly human. High Counselor Lexmore raised his hand for silence. The Council has heard the human warning. We thank Ambassador Vasquez for her concern, but we see no need for action. The motion to investigate these readings is denied. Elena felt her heart sink. She had hoped that at least one species would take her seriously. What if you are wrong? She asked. What if there really is something out there? Dixmore's translator made a sound like a sigh. Then we will deal with it when it arrives. The Council has faced many threats over the years. Pirates, rogue AI, solar disasters, political wars. We have survived them all. If something new appears, we will survive that too. But what if this is different? Elena pressed. What if this is bigger than anything we have faced before? The room erupted in noise again. This time it was not just laughter. Elena heard words being translated as foolish, primitive, and paranoid. The aliens were not just dismissing her warning anymore. They were insulting her and her entire species. Elena felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She would not give these creatures the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Instead, she looked up at the main viewing screen that dominated one wall of the chamber. Right now, it showed a peaceful map of the galaxy with all the inhabited systems, marked in soft blue light. Very well, Elena said, her voice steady despite her anger. I have given my warning. It is recorded in the Council files. When this comes to pass, remember that Earth tried to help. She turned to leave, but Dexmore's voice stopped her. Ambassador, your species is still young. You will learn that the galaxy is not as dangerous as you think. Your people came from a violent world, so you see threats everywhere. Most of us learned long ago that cooperation, not fear, is the key to survival. Elena looked back at him. Hi. Counselor, my people also learned that ignoring a threat does not make it go away. She walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. Behind her, she could hear the aliens already moving on to other business. Trade agreements, shipping schedules, resource allocation. All the normal things that kept their comfortable civilization running. As the doors closed behind her, Elena took one last look at the viewing screen. The peaceful blue dots marked every world where billions of people lived their lives, thinking they were safe. Soon, she thought, that screen would tell a very different story. Elena walked down the long hallway outside the council chamber. Her footsteps were the only sound in the empty corridor. She had done everything she could. She had given them the data, explained the threat, and begged them to listen. Now all she could do was go back to Earth and prepare for what was coming behind her. Through the thick doors, she could still hear the sound of alien laughter. Captain Zixthala had been exploring space for 30 years. His ship, the Seeker of Truth, was one of the best in the Kethmori fleet. It had advanced sensors that could detect things from very far away. The captain was proud of his work, mapping new star systems and looking for planets that might support life. On this day, he was checking the outer reaches. This was the empty space at the edge of known territory. Most ships never came out this far because there was nothing interesting to find. Just cold space, old dead stars, and cosmic dust, but today was different. Captain Zixthala was drinking his morning tea when the alarm went off. The sound made him jump and spill hot liquid on his uniform. He quickly put down his cup and rushed to the bridge of his ship. What is it? He asked his sensor officer, a young female named Lincera. Lincera looked confused and scared. Her four arms were moving quickly over her control panel, checking and rechecking the readings. Captain, I am picking up energy signatures that match the human report from 3 days ago. The captain felt his blood turn cold. He had been at the council meeting when the human ambassador gave her warning. Like everyone else, he had thought she was being silly. Humans were new to space and did not understand how things worked. They saw danger everywhere because they came from a violent world. "Show me," he said. The main screen lit up with sensor data. Captain Zixthala stared at the numbers and felt fear creep up his spine. The energy readings were exactly like the ones the human had shown to the council. Strange patterns that did not match anything in their databases, and they were moving. "How many contacts?" he asked. 17 so far, Captain, but the number keeps growing." Captain Zixthala watched the screen as more energy signatures appeared. They were not random. They moved with purpose, like a fleet of ships heading somewhere specific. But these readings were unlike any ships he had ever seen. "Send a message to the council immediately," he ordered. "Priority 1. Tell them the human data was correct." As his communications officer worked, Captain Zixthala kept watching the sensors. The energy signatures were getting stronger. Whatever these things were, they were coming closer. And they were big. Much bigger than any ship in the galaxy. Within an hour, similar reports started coming in from all over the outer reaches. Mining stations, research outposts, and patrol ships all sent the same message. Unknown contacts were moving through space. Heading toward the core worlds, on the mining station Kepler-7, Supervisor Nalthik was having the worst day of his career. His crew had been working on extracting rare metals from asteroids when their sensors started going crazy. The readings showed something huge approaching their position. "How big is it?" he asked his head engineer. "The computer says it is the size of a small moon, but that cannot be right. Nothing that big could move through space at those speeds." Supervisor Nalthik looked out the window of his station. Space looked normal. Stars twinkled in the distance, and his mining ships continued their work. But his sensors told a different story. Something was out there, something that did not want to be seen clearly. "Send a report to headquarters," he ordered. "Tell them we need a military ship out here right away." Back at the Galactic Council, the mood had changed completely. The great chamber that had been filled with laughter 3 days ago was now quiet and tense. Representatives from all 12 species sat in their pods, studying the incoming reports with growing worry. High Counselor Vexmore stood at the center of the room, holding a datapad with shaking hands. His translator worked hard to keep up with his rapid speech. "We have received 47 confirmed reports of unknown contacts in the outer reaches," he announced. The energy signatures matched the human data exactly. General Vextar the Zephyrian, military leader who had laughed at Elena's warning, was no longer making clicking sounds of amusement. His hard shell was darker than usual, which meant he was stressed. "My fleet commanders are asking for orders," he said. "Should we send ships to investigate?" "The collective is analyzing all available data," said the Vorthan representative. Their crystal body was flashing with rapid colors that meant deep thought and concern. "These energy patterns are unlike anything in our records. We cannot identify. What type of technology could produce such readings?" Ambassador Elena Vasquez was called back to address the council. She had been staying in her quarters, trying not to feel too angry about how the aliens had treated her. When the message came asking her to return, she was not surprised. She had known this moment would come. Elena walked into the chamber and saw how different everything was. 3 days ago, the aliens had been relaxed and dismissive. Now they looked worried and scared. Their body language showed fear in ways that were easy to read, even across species. "Ambassador Vasquez," High Counselor Vexmore said when she reached the center of the room, "we must ask you about your original data. How long have your people been tracking these signals?" Elena kept her voice calm and professional, even though part of her wanted to say, "I told you so." "Our deep space monitoring stations first detected unusual energy patterns 6 weeks ago. We spent 3 weeks analyzing the data before I brought it to the council." 6 weeks? The hegemony representative's red eyes glowed brighter with what Elena recognized as surprise. "Why did you wait so long to report this?" "Because we wanted to be sure," Elena replied. We knew that bringing incomplete data to the council would result in exactly what happened 3 days ago. We were dismissed and ignored. The chamber fell silent. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their pods. Elena could see that. They were starting to understand the mistake they had made. "What do your scientists think these signals represent?" asked the Aquatic Union delegate. Elena looked around the room, making eye contact with as many aliens as she could. "Our best analysis suggests that these are not natural phenomena. The movement patterns are too organized, too purposeful. Something is coordinating these energy sources, directing them toward inhabited space." "Impossible," muttered the Vorthan. Representative, but their colors showed uncertainty. Elena activated her datapad and sent information to the main viewing screen. The display showed a map of the galaxy with red dots marking all the confirmed sightings. The pattern was clear and terrifying. "As you can see," Elena continued, "the contacts are not randomly distributed. They form a rough sphere that is slowly contracting. The center of that sphere contains most of our inhabited worlds." Captain Zixthala's latest report arrived as Elena was speaking. The communication was broadcast to the entire council, and his voice carried clearly through the chambers. "Speakers, Council Command, this is Captain Zixthala of the Seeker of Truth. The unknown contacts have increased their speed. I count over 200 energy signatures now, all moving in formation toward the core systems. Whatever these things are, they are not trying to hide anymore." The captain's voice was steady, but Elena could hear the fear underneath. He was a veteran space explorer, someone who had seen many strange things in his career. If he was scared, then the situation was very serious indeed. General Vextar was getting reports from his own ships now. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the information. "My patrol fleets confirm the human data," he announced. "Unknown contacts are moving through 7 different sectors. They are maintaining formation and heading directly for our territory." High Counselor Thexmore's forearms moved nervously as he tried to process everything that was happening. His species had been leaders in the council for thousands of years, but they had never faced anything like this. "How long until they reach the outer colonies?" he asked. Elena checked her calculations. "At their current speed, approximately 4 days." The number hit the chamber like a physical blow. 4 days was no time at all in galactic terms. It usually took weeks to coordinate military responses between different species. Their fleets were scattered across hundreds of star systems, conducting normal peacetime operations. "We need to start evacuating the frontier worlds," Elena said. "Get the civilian populations moved to safer locations while we still have time." "Evacuate?" The hegemony representative's voice carried disbelief. "We cannot simply abandon entire planets based on sensor readings." "Then what do you suggest?" Elena asked. "We tried to warn you 3 days ago, and you laughed. Now the threat is confirmed and getting closer every hour. How many more reports do you need before you take action?" Before anyone could answer, every screen in the chamber flickered. For a moment, the displays went dark. When they came back online, they showed something that made everyone freeze in terror. The screens now displayed the galaxy map, but the red dots representing unknown contacts had multiplied. There were not 200 anymore, there were thousands, and they were all moving faster, converging on the inhabited worlds like a closing fist. Elena stared at the screen and felt her stomach drop. "They were waiting," she whispered. "The first contacts were just scouts. Now the real force is revealing itself." The chamber erupted in panicked voices as representatives tried to contact their home worlds. Everyone was talking at once, giving orders and demanding updates. But Elena kept staring at the screen, watching the red dots multiply and spread. The mining colony on Kepler 442b was home to 3,000 workers and their families. It was a small world with rich metal deposits that helped supply the galaxy's shipyards. The colonists had built a good life there, with schools for their children and parks where families could relax after long workdays. Marcus Chun was having breakfast with his daughter when the alarms started screaming. Marcus was the colony's chief engineer. a human who had moved to Kepler 442b 5 years ago for a better job. His 8-year-old daughter, Amy, was eating her cereal and complaining about her math homework when every warning system in the colony activated at once. "Daddy, what's that noise?" Amy asked, covering her ears. Marcus was already moving toward his communication panel. As chief engineer, he was responsible for the colony's safety systems. The alarms meant something very bad was happening. "Unknown contacts approaching the system," came the voice of Colony Administrator Velchin over the speakers. Velchin was a Keth Mori who had run the colony for 10 years. Marcus had never heard fear in his voice before, but he heard it now. Marcus grabbed his emergency gear and kissed his daughter on the head. "Stay inside with Mrs. Patterson," he told her. Mrs. Patterson was their elderly neighbor who watched Amy when Marcus had to work. "But Daddy, no arguments, sweetheart." "I'll be back soon." Marcus ran to the command center, his heart pounding. Other workers were running too, all heading to their emergency positions. The colony had practiced for disasters before, but this felt different. This felt real. In the command center, Administrator Velchin was staring at the main screen with his large, dark eyes wide with terror. His forearms moved rapidly over the control panels, trying to make sense of what the sensors were showing. "What do we have?" Marcus asked. "3 contacts, but they are unlike anything I have ever seen," Velchin replied. His translator was having trouble keeping up with his rapid speech. "They appeared at the edge of our system 30 minutes ago. No ships, no engine signatures, no communication signals. They are just there." Marcus looked at the screen and felt his blood turn cold. The contacts were massive, each one the size of a small moon. But they were not showing up on visual scanners. Only the energy sensors could detect them, and those readings were off the charts. "How fast are they moving?" Marcus asked. "That is the problem," Velchin said. "They are not moving through space in any way we understand. They seem to be folding space around themselves, jumping from one location to another without crossing the distance in between." As they watched, one of the contacts suddenly appeared much closer to the planet. It had covered millions of kilometers in an instant, without any visible means of propulsion. "Activate the defense grid," Marcus said. Velchin was already working on it. The colony had military-grade shields and weapons, enough to fight off pirates or rogue ships. The defensive systems came online, surrounding the planet with an energy barrier that could stop most attacks. "Broadcasting on all frequencies," announced Communications Officer Talvera. "Identifying ourselves as a peaceful mining colony and requesting the contacts to state their intentions." They waited for a response. The 3 massive contacts continued to approach the planet, their energy signatures growing stronger with each passing minute. But there was no reply to their messages, no sign that the approaching entities even cared about communication. Marcus checked his chronometer. It had been 45 minutes since the first alarm. Following standard protocol, he activated the emergency beacon that would alert the nearest military forces. Help would come, but it would take hours or even days to arrive. "Contact 1 is entering our atmosphere," Talvera announced. Everyone in the command center watched the main screen as something impossible happened. The first entity passed through the planet's atmosphere without any visible form. The energy readings showed it was there, but their cameras saw nothing. It was like a ghost made of pure power. "Shields are holding," Marcus reported, but even as he said it, he noticed something wrong. The energy levels in the defensive grid were fluctuating in ways that made no sense. Administrator Velchin tried to contact the approaching entities. "One more time. Unknown vessels, this is Kepler 442b colony. We are civilians engaged in peaceful mining operations. Please respond." The response came, but not in any language they understood. It was not even sound in the traditional sense. Instead, it was a vibration that seemed to come from inside their own minds. The message was wordless, but somehow clear. Resistance was pointless. Marcus felt the vibration in his bones and knew they were in terrible danger. "We need to evacuate the colony," he said. "Evacuate?" Velchin's translator struggled with the concept. "We have 3,000 people here. Our transport ships cannot carry everyone." Then we save who we can, Marcus replied grimly. But before they could start evacuation procedures, something happened that changed everything. The colony's defensive shields, which had been protecting them for nearly an hour, simply stopped working. Not destroyed or overwhelmed, just stopped. As if the entities had reached out and turned them off. How is that possible? Talvera asked. Marcus was checking the shield generators and found something that terrified him. The generators are still running, he said. They are producing power and the systems show everything is normal, but the shields are not there anymore. Through the command center windows, they could see the colony's buildings beginning to change. The metal walls started to flow like liquid, reshaping themselves into forms that hurt to look at. The geometric patterns were too complex for human or alien minds to fully understand. The entities are not destroying the colony, Velchin whispered. They are changing it. Marcus grabbed the emergency communicator and opened a channel to all colony residents. This is Chief Engineer Chun. All personnel are to report to the main transport bay immediately. This is not a drill. Evacuation is beginning now. But even as he gave the order, he could see it was too late. The changes were spreading too fast. Buildings flowed together, forming new structures that pulsed with alien energy. The ground itself began to shift, creating patterns that made the colonists feel dizzy and sick when they looked at them. In his quarters, Marcus's daughter Amy was hiding under her bed while Mrs. Patterson tried to keep her calm. Through the window, they could see their neighborhood changing into something from a nightmare. The familiar houses were melting and reforming, becoming part of a larger structure that seemed to be alive. "I want my daddy," Amy cried. Mrs. Patterson, despite her own fear, held the little girl close. "He will come for you, sweetheart. Your father always keeps his promises." Back in the command center, Marcus and the other administrators watched helplessly as their colony transformed around them. The entities were not conquering the planet in any military sense. They were absorbing it, making it part of something larger and more complex. "The people," Velchin said suddenly. "What is happening to the people?" Marcus switched the display to show the residential areas. What he saw made his heart stop. The colonists were not being killed. They were being changed, just like the buildings. Their bodies flowed and shifted, becoming part of the alien structures, but somehow they were still alive, still conscious. Marcus could see their faces in the flowing walls, their eyes wide with terror and confusion. "They are being absorbed," Marcus whispered, "turned into parts of whatever these things are building." The communication array was still working, so Marcus began recording everything. If rescue ships arrived later, they would need to know what had happened here. He spoke quickly into the recorder, describing what he was seeing and what the entities were doing. "This is Chief Engineer Marcus, Pune of Kepler 442b Colony. We are under attack by unknown entities. They are not destroying our settlement. They are transforming it and everyone in it. The technology they are using is beyond our understanding. They can manipulate matter itself, changing solid objects into new forms." As he spoke, Marcus felt a strange tingling in his hands. Looking down, he saw that his fingers were beginning to flow like the walls around him. The transformation was starting on him too. "The entities do not communicate in any normal way," he continued, his voice staying calm despite what was happening to his body. "They seem to absorb knowledge directly from their victims. Everything we know, everything we have learned, becomes part of them." Marcus thought about his daughter and felt a surge of desperate hope. Maybe the rescue ships would arrive in time to save some people. Maybe Amy could escape what was happening to the rest of them. "To whoever receives this message," he said into the recorder, "these entities are not invaders in the normal sense. They are gardeners and we are their crop. They have been waiting for us to reach the right level of development before harvesting what we have built." The tingling had spread up his arms now. Marcus could feel his thoughts becoming fuzzy as his brain began to change. But he forced himself to keep talking, to get out as much information as possible. They learn from everything they absorb. Our technology, our knowledge, our memories. Each colony they transform makes them stronger and smarter. They are not just taking our resources, they are taking our minds. Administrator Velchin had stopped moving entirely. His body had become part of the command center's wall, but his eyes were still aware. Admiral Keshtar had commanded fleets for 40 years. He had fought pirates, stopped rebellions, and protected trade routes across the galaxy. The Zephyrian Defense Force was known for being disciplined, brave, and effective. Their ships were fast and their weapons were powerful. None of that mattered now. The Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the victorious Dawn, watching the worst military disaster in galactic history unfold before his eyes. 300 ships from 5 different species had joined together to stop the alien entities at the edge of the Proxima system. It was the largest combined fleet ever assembled. The battle lasted 18 minutes. All ships maintain formation. Admiral Keshtar ordered through his mandibles, but his voice already carried the sound of defeat. The alien entities had appeared without warning, materializing in space like dark dreams becoming real. The entities were not ships in any sense that the Admiral understood. They had no hulls, no engines, no weapons that he could identify. They were flowing masses of darkness that moved through space as if the laws of physics did not apply to them. Some were the size of small moons, others stretched across space, like living shadows. Flagship Eternal Glory reports contact with unknown entity, came the voice of Captain Rilton over the communication system. The Eternal Glory was a Kethmori battleship, one of the most advanced vessels in the fleet. Admiral Keshtar watched his tactical display as the battleship's icon approached one of the alien entities. The ship's weapons opened fire, sending beams of concentrated energy toward the target. For a moment, it looked like the attack was working. The energy beam struck the entity and seemed to cause some kind of reaction. Then something impossible happened. The entity began to change, absorbing the energy beams and using them to grow larger. The Admiral watched in horror as the alien form reached out with tendrils of living darkness and touched the Eternal Glory. "Captain Rilton, report your status," Admiral Keshtar demanded. The response came, but it was not Captain Rilton's voice anymore. It sounded like dozens of voices speaking at once, all saying the same words in perfect harmony. "We are no longer what we were. We are becoming something greater. Resistance brings only absorption. Join us willingly, and the pain will be less." The Admiral felt his blood turn to ice. The alien entities were not just destroying the ships. They were taking them along with everyone aboard. The Eternal Glory was still visible on his screens, but it was changing. The metal hull flowed like liquid, reforming into shapes that hurt to look at. "All ships, fall back to minimum safe distance," Admiral Keshtar ordered. But even as he gave the command, he knew it was useless. The entities moved through space faster than any ship could travel. There was no safe distance. The Vorthan collective ship Crystal Mine tried a different approach. Instead of energy weapons, they fired physical projectiles made of compressed matter. The projectiles traveled at incredible speed and should have caused massive damage to any target. The alien entities simply absorbed them, adding the matter to its own mass and growing even larger. "Admiral, this is Captain Vexara of the Crystal Mine," came the transmission. "Our weapons are having no effect. The entities appear to be converting everything we fire at them into more of themselves." Admiral Keshtar had commanded fleets for 4 decades, but he had never faced an enemy like this. Every military strategy he knew was based on the idea that you could hurt your opponent. But these entities seemed to grow stronger with every attack. "Try the quantum disruptors," he ordered. Quantum disruptors were the most powerful weapons in the galactic arsenal. They could tear apart the very fabric of space-time. The hegemony. Vessel Iron Logic fired its quantum disruptors at the nearest entity. The weapons created tears in space itself, openings that should have destroyed anything they touched. For a moment, the Admiral felt hope as he watched the entity seem to break apart. Then the entity reformed, but now it was different. It had absorbed the quantum energy and learned how to use it. The Admiral watched in fascination and terror as the entity began creating its own tears in space. using them to move instantly from one location to another. "They are learning," whispered Communications Officer Talonex. "Every weapon we use teaches." It was something new. The entity that had absorbed the quantum disruptor technology suddenly appeared next to 3 more ships. It reached out with tendrils of dark energy and touched them all at once. The ships began to change, their hulls flowing, and merging with the alien form. Admiral Keshtar heard the voices of the crews as they were absorbed. Human voices, Zephyrin clicks, Kethmori harmonics, all blending together into a chorus of unwilling unity. The crews were still alive, still conscious, but they were no longer themselves. They had become part of something larger and more terrible. "Admiral, we have to retreat," urged Captain Malkin of the destroyer Swift Strike. "We cannot fight something that turns our own weapons against us." But Admiral Keshtar was watching his tactical display and seeing something that filled him with despair. The entities were not just absorbing individual ships anymore. They were connecting with each other, forming a network that spanned the entire battle zone. Every ship they absorbed made the network smarter and more capable. "They are not just taking our technology," he realized. "They are taking our knowledge. Everything we know about warfare, about strategy, about how our ships work, it all becomes part of them." The entity that had been formed from the eternal glory was now approaching the flagship. Admiral Keshtar could see Captain Rilton's face in the flowing metal of its hull, along with the faces of his entire crew. They were still aware, still trying to speak, but their voices had become part of the alien chorus. "Admiral Keshtar," came the voice of his old friend, but changed and twisted. "You cannot win. We have seen your memories, learned your tactics. Every strategy you might use, we already know. Surrender now and join us. Together we can explore wonders you cannot imagine." The Admiral felt tears running down his face. "Captain, Rilton had been his friend for 20 years. They had served together, fought together, saved each other's lives more times than either could count. Now his friend was something else, a part of an alien intelligence that was beyond understanding. All remaining ships, this is Admiral Keshtar," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Retreat immediately. Do not engage the entities. Fall back to the core worlds and warn everyone you can." Only 60 ships out of the original 300 were still free. The rest had been absorbed or were in the process of being transformed. Admiral Keshtar watched as his proud fleet became part of the alien network, adding their knowledge and capabilities to an enemy that grew stronger with every victory. The victorious Dawn began to retreat, but the Admiral knew it was probably too late. The entities now had access to all the absorbed ships' databases. They knew the locations of every world, every military base, every defensive position in the galaxy. They had star charts that showed the quickest routes to the most populated systems. "Sir, we are receiving transmissions from the absorbed ships," reported Communications Officer Talonex. "They are broadcasting on all military frequencies." "Block them," Admiral Keshtar ordered. He did not want to hear the voices of his absorbed crews, even though part of him desperately wanted to know if any trace of their original personalities remained, but Talonex shook his head. "I cannot block them, sir. They are using our own communication protocols, our own encryption codes. They know all our systems because they have absorbed the people who designed them." The Admiral listened. As the absorbed fleet began broadcasting tactical information, they were sharing details about galactic defenses, weak points in planetary shields, the locations of ammunition depots and shipyards, everything the entities needed to plan their next attacks. "They are not just conquering us," Admiral Keshtar sighed quietly. "They are learning how to conquer everyone else." As the surviving ships fled toward the core worlds, the Admiral sent out emergency broadcasts to every world in the galaxy. But he knew the warnings would not be enough. The entities had absorbed 300 ships and their crews. They now possessed the military knowledge of 5 different species. Along with detailed information about galactic defenses, the real war was just beginning, and the galaxy's greatest military minds were now fighting for the other side, behind them. The entities began to move toward the inhabited worlds, their forms shifting and flowing as they incorporated their new knowledge. They had learned how to build ships, how to use weapons, how to coordinate attacks, but more importantly, they had learned how their enemies thought. Every tactical manual, every strategic plan, every defensive protocol was now part of their collective intelligence. They knew where the major populations were located, which worlds had the best defensive systems, and how long it would take reinforcements to arrive at any given location. Admiral Keshtar had spent his entire career learning how to protect the galaxy. Now all that knowledge was being used against the very people he had sworn to defend. The entities moved through space with purpose, heading toward targets that the Admiral's own absorbed crews had helped them select. The galaxy's defenders had become its greatest threat, and there seemed to be no way to stop what was coming next. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from 12 species sat in stunned silence, watching the main viewing screens show the approaching doom. The alien entities had absorbed 300 ships and were now moving toward the core worlds with terrifying purpose. High Counselor Thexmore's forearm shook as he tried to process the magnitude of their defeat. His translator worked overtime to convert his panicked thoughts into words that other species could understand. The entities will reach the outer colonies in less than 6 hours, he announced. Our combined fleets have been destroyed or absorbed. We have no military response that can stop them. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the chamber, but this time no one was laughing at her. The aliens who had mocked her warning just days before now looked at her with desperate hope, as if she might have some solution to their impossible situation. What do your people suggest, Ambassador? Asked the Vorthan representative. Their crystal body was flashing with colors that meant fear and confusion. Your species has experience with warfare. How do we fight an enemy that grows stronger with every attack? Elena felt the weight of the galaxy's fate pressing down on her shoulders. She had warned them this would happen, but being right brought no satisfaction. Billions of people were about to die or worse, and somehow everyone was looking to humanity for answers. The entities learn from everything they absorb, Elena said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Every weapon we use, every tactic we try, becomes part of their knowledge. Traditional warfare is not just useless against them, it makes them stronger. Then what do we do? Demanded General Vexstar, his mandibles clicking with frustration. We cannot simply surrender our entire civilization. Elena looked at the tactical displays showing the entities' approach. They moved with perfect coordination, their absorbed knowledge allowing them to choose the most efficient routes to the major population centers. But something about their movement pattern made her think. They are using our own strategic thinking against us, she realized. The absorbed military officers, the tactical databases, the strategic plans, all of that knowledge is making them predictable. Predictable how? Asked the hegemony representative. Elena activated her data pad and sent information to the main screen. Look at their approach vectors. They are heading for the most heavily defended worlds first because that is what any military commander would do. Neutralize the biggest threats before they can organize a response. The chamber studied the display as Elena highlighted the entity's projected paths. She was right. The alien forces were following classic military doctrine, approaching the galaxy's fortress worlds and major naval bases with textbook precision. But that knowledge came from our people, High Counselor Thexmore pointed out. How does knowing their strategy help us if we cannot fight them? Elena felt a strange smile cross her face. For the first time since this crisis began, she had an idea that might actually work. Because there is one thing about human military thinking that no other species in this galaxy understands, she said. We do not just plan for victory. We plan for defeat. The aliens looked at her with confusion. Planning for defeat was not a concept that made sense to most galactic civilizations. Wars were won through superior technology, better tactics, and careful strategy. The idea of deliberately planning to lose was foreign to them. On Earth we have a saying, Elena continued. If you cannot win a fair fight, then do not fight fair. Human military doctrine includes something we call scorched earth tactics. If we cannot keep something out of enemy hands, we destroy it so they cannot use it. You want to destroy our own worlds? The Aquatic Union representative's tank bubbled. With shock, not destroy them, Elena said. Poison them. Make them useless to the entities. She brought up new information on the screens, showing technical specifications for human computer systems. The entities absorb knowledge through direct contact with technology and living minds. But human computers have something that no other species in the galaxy uses: security viruses. General Vexstar's compound eyes focused on the data. Viruses? You mean biological weapons? Not biological. Digital, Elena explained. Human computer systems are designed to fight off invasive programs that try to steal information or take control. We call them viruses because they behave like diseases, spreading from one system to another and causing damage. The chamber began to understand what she was suggesting. The Vorthan Collective's representative pulsed with colors that indicated rapid calculation. You want to infect the entities with these digital viruses, they said. Use their own absorption ability against them. Elena nodded. Every human colony, every human ship, every human computer system in the galaxy is protected by dozens of different security programs. Most of them are designed to activate automatically when they detect an intrusion attempt. She pulled up more technical details. The entities think they are absorbing useful knowledge when they take our technology, but human systems are full of traps, dead-end programs, and automatic defenses that will activate the moment they try to use what they have stolen. High Counselor Thexmore was beginning to see the possibilities. But will these viruses actually harm the entities? They are not made of computer code. Maybe not directly, Elena admitted, but they will corrupt the knowledge the entities have absorbed, turn their perfect coordination into chaos, make their strategic thinking unreliable, as if summoned by their conversation. Alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. New reports were coming in from the frontier, and none of them were good. The entities have reached the Centauri system, announced Communications Officer Dowran. They are beginning to absorb the orbital defense platforms. Elena felt her heart race. Centauri was home to over 50 million people, including thousands of humans who worked in the system's manufacturing facilities. Send a message to all human facilities in the system, she ordered. Tell them to activate Emergency Protocol 7. Immediately. What is Emergency Protocol 7? Asked General Vexstar. Elena's smile became wider and more dangerous. Something that human military programmers designed 50 years ago, when we were still afraid that other species might try to steal our technology. It turns every human computer system into a digital weapon. On screens throughout the chamber, they watched as human facilities across the Centauri system began implementing the protocol. Factory computers, communication arrays, even the simple processors and household appliances all started running the same program. The entities reached the first human installation and began their absorption process. For a moment, everything proceeded as it had on other worlds. The alien forms touched the facility and began converting it into part of their network. Then something unexpected happened. The entity that had absorbed the human facility suddenly stopped moving. Its flowing form became rigid, and the energy patterns around it began to fluctuate wildly. The perfect coordination it had maintained with the other entities broke down. What is happening to it? Asked the Vorthan representative. Elena watched the readings with satisfaction. Human computer systems do not just contain useful information. They contain thousands of programs designed to confuse, misdirect, and trap anyone trying to steal data. The entity is trying to process all of that at once. The affected entity began to move erratically, its form shifting in ways that seemed random and purposeless. The other entities in the system tried to help it, but when they made contact, the digital chaos spread to them as well. The viruses are jumping from one entity to another, Elena announced, just like they were designed to do. Reports began coming in from other systems where human facilities were implementing Emergency Protocol 7 every time the entities tried to absorb human technology, they got more than they bargained for. The digital viruses corrupted their stolen knowledge, turned their perfect strategies into confusion, and spread through their network like a real disease. The entities had spent eons learning how to absorb and use the knowledge of other species, but they had never encountered a species that deliberately sabotaged its own technology to prevent theft. "It is working," High Counselor Lexmore said, his translator struggling to convey his amazement. "The entities are losing coordination." Elena watched the tactical displays as the alien attack began to falter. The entities were still dangerous, still capable of tremendous destruction, but their perfect unity was breaking down. Some were moving in circles, others were fighting each other, and a few had stopped moving entirely. "This will not stop them forever," Elena warned. "They will eventually learn to filter out the viruses, but it gives us time." "Time for what?" asked General Vexstar. Elena looked around the chamber at all the species that had laughed at her warning. "Time to do what humans do best. Time to fight dirty, break rules, and use every underhanded trick we can think of." She activated her communicator and opened a channel to Earth. "This is Ambassador Vasquez. Implement the Chaos Protocol on all human systems galaxy-wide. It is time to show these entities what happens when you try to harvest a species that learned warfare by fighting itself." The screens around the chamber flickered as human systems across the